Hello, everyone. Hi,
Hi
everyone.
everyone. Um,
So maybe I will start with welcome and then Imogen will start as well. Um, so thank you for joining us online and also welcome to everyone who will watch us later at home. Um, it's our Research Integrity in Practice live session and it's really great to see you. And I'm joining together with Dr. Imogen Smith, my co-moderator, and beautiful Dr. Kerry Freeman, who is called now Billingham, still learning. And we will talk about our previous important points of this module. We started with honesty, rigor, transparency, and recognition, and this week is about fairness. And in our online discussions, we talked about authorship. That's why we thought Dr. Kerry will be a fantastic guest speaker. But now I will pass it to Imogen to welcome and acknowledge the country for us.
yeah, sure. Hi, so I'm Imogen. I'm co-moderating with Alexandra, and I just want to thank you all for your contributions to the discussions. It's been really, really interesting these last few weeks, and we've still got a couple of equally interesting weeks to come. Before we go any further, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which QUT now stands and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And also acknowledge that the places we're on have always been places of research, teaching, and learning. So I suppose without further delay, the what we're all here for is to hear from you and for you to ask us some questions. And obviously, we have Kerry here as well, who is an expert, probably one of the most experienced people in Australia at helping HDR students and early career researchers with the writing of their theses and their research. So welcome, Kerry, and thank you so much for joining us. And she's also a former moderator of Research Integrity in Practice, so she's incredibly experienced, and I really hope that you can make use of her today in this session. So I guess I'll open it up to you. You can, of course, use the chat if you like, or you can just turn your microphone off and talk to us. But if you have any reflections or questions or anything at all that you wanted to say or were curious about with the module, this is your time. So anyone have anything they want to chat about?
The first up I'd like to talk about is I'm working, for those that know, Brisbane on the Centenary Bridge, and I found an error
Mhm.
in one of their drawings. And I was talking to the engineer. He said, "Why didn't they tell us about that error?" Oh no, we don't. They don't do that. They wait for us to find a mistake because if we don't find it and something goes wrong, they blame us. And I said,
I remember this, Christy, from it's Christy, is that the right
"That's right. Yeah,
pronunciation? Yeah, I remember this from your introduction in the very week O in our very first week, because I thought that was fascinating to actually meet someone who's working on the Centenary Bridge, and can clear up for me that they're not duplicating the bridge. They're actually, because yeah, every time I go across it, I go, what are they going to do with the anyway? So
yeah."
thanks for clearing that up. But
The sort of
yeah.
like attitude is, "Oh, we don't tell you about our mistakes because you've got to find them."
Mm,
And it's
I
like
would,
it's just like, and
yeah.
what we're doing now is like just it's the complete opposite. It's antithesis because it's for them it's a commercial decision. They so they if the engineer or the contractors don't find the mistake, they go, "Oh, that was your fault."
Mm.
It's just like, man,
It's an important, it's actually, you raised a really important point because what we actually see here is how different research and university research is from everything else in terms of ethics and integrity and how, um, I suppose, vital and mandatory the frameworks around ethics and ethics approval and transparency and all the principles that we're talking about in the module how central they are to university research and how much I suppose they safeguard and guide our behaviour and the way we conduct our business within a university as researchers. But the rest of the world is completely different and doesn't work like that.
I know. It's like you go through all this integrity and you just think, man, they've got none.
Mm.
Yeah.
But there's also no, well, I guess, I mean, obviously there are legal frameworks and various codes and that people have to abide by, but as long as you sit within those, then yeah, it's the same with doing market research. So if you worked for a market research firm or a consulting firm, the kind of stuff that you would do there is actually very similar to the research that a lot of us do here at the university. But because it's not within the academic framework, you don't need ethics. You just go and do it. You just send out a survey. You know, it's completely a completely different world, really.
Yeah.
Kerry, did you have any comments?
I would like to
Sorry
actually
to put you on the spot.
Kerry. I would like to invite Kerry because we don't have her for the whole session. I would like to invite Kerry to actually join us and share her real-world experience on authorship and tell us how actually do we do to recognize everyone? How do we decide on who will write each part, and did you have to negotiate who will be first author, second author? Maybe you can tell us more about this process from your experience.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for inviting me today. I think because you're all at the HDR stage at the moment, so generally you'll be publishing with your supervisors, I would imagine. Um, so I think and at that point you need to be the first author, particularly if you're writing by publication. So generally you should be able to negotiate that quite with no real problems with your supervisors. If they're wanting to be first author, that's something you'd need to have a look at what the rules are generally for your school or your faculty or your university around that. In my experience, I was very lucky. My supervisor was really lovely, and we knew each other very well because she'd also supervised me for my master's dissertation. She actually didn't want to be on the paper that we published from my thesis, which I think is a little bit unusual. But she had influenced me in so many ways. She didn't write the paper, but she did give me some great ideas about it. And so, because of the relationship that we had and how she had had a massive impact on me all the way through, with some really important decisions around methodology and so I wanted her to be on there as well. And
Recognized.
I guess as well too, I was naive as well at that point. Hopefully, everybody here is less naive and is aware of the importance of publications if your career is going to be in academia or even if it's not. I would say I also sort of regret that I didn't publish more out of my thesis. It was one of those things where it's time, but if you can publish 2 or 3, regardless of whether you're via publication or not, I would recommend that. I was in a rush in the end, and what I ended up publishing from my thesis was actually sort of the third part, if that makes sense. I could have done something from the first phase, the second, but for me, the time I just didn't have the time. But I would encourage you to publish as much as you can. I sort of thought that I would later. Yeah, later doesn't come because you move on. And I felt the data was old by now, even though nothing, I don't think it would have been, but yeah, so that's the first thing my advice would be publish as much as you can from your thesis as you're going through. Of course, you need to get the thesis done, and it's actually interesting. Different supervisors will have different attitudes around this. You may have already noticed some of them will say, you got to publish from the beginning. Some will say, don't worry about publishing, just get your thesis done. So again, and this is your decision really in the end. But yeah, I would say if you can be first author on those papers, that will be really good for you. Um, the other thing, talking about authorship as well, I'll give you another example that a lot of you may encounter, which is I was employed as a research assistant for one of my colleagues. Um, so he was a convener of some of the courses that I was teaching. And he said, I can't pay you, but I will put you on as an author. And I was like, okay, no worries. So I don't know, has anyone pitched something like that to them? Can't pay you to be my assistant, but I'll put you on the paper. Yep, Imogen's a yes.
Oh, I had the opposite, which was we're going to pay you, but you're not going to be an author. And that actually, I did years of RA work. And when I look back, I probably should have had my name on a few things. My name isn't on because there was this, you're named or you're paid, one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
which is actually nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone else is getting paid. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, an insight into academia there. Um,
Makes me feel very fortunate that I had the opposite, where I was both paid and put on as a co-author.
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm just appointing someone as an RA now, and I've made it very clear to her that she will be named on this paper. You know, it's we've got to look after each other. Tim, sorry.
Okay.
I was just going to say, do any of the universities tend to have policies around that, or
They,
like sort of set?
All of them.
they will.
Mm.
They will. Are you at QT, Tim?
No, I'm not.
No, that's okay. That's fine. So yeah, do a little bit of a search. They'll all have responsible research guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the code, the Australian code, but QT also has their own guidelines as well. Your university will be the same. They should have information and advice around authorship somewhere on their website. But I also think it's very much to do with your faculty or your school. So you will find if you are in a hard science like chemistry or physics, the way they go about it would be probably quite different to if you're in the arts. And I'm not saying any of them are right or wrong in any way, they're just different. Anne?
I was just going to say that some of the projects I've been fortunate to be involved in as an RA was international ones,
Great.
and different cultures have very different
Good point.
ideas. So we thankfully had someone very senior doing those negotiations, but in some Asian cultures, even the boss, who's no involvement in the work whatsoever, seems to think that their name should be on the paper,
Interesting.
which is why you see a lot of Asian papers with 20 authors on it. So yeah, that you need someone senior and maybe someone even involved in the academic integrity side of that to be involved in those negotiations if you're doing some sort of cross-cultural work on that.
And the
Yeah.
other thing too that I've found is that often when you start with a project, everybody is lovely and remain lovely, by the way. Everyone is lovely. They're sort of thinking, this is in my experience, and they're thinking, oh, I'm not actually going to have that much time to be part of this project. Or I don't know how much I can bring to this project, a little bit of imposter syndrome in there, where in the end, everybody does bring something to the project. They do have the knowledge to be part of the project. But in my experience with that, it was a little bit like each person was saying, "Oh, I don't care about what the list, what the author where we go in the authorship." And pretty much everybody said that. So we asked ChatGPT, hey, here's 5 names, put it into whatever order you want. Now, in hindsight, what happened was that the people that actually probably spent more time on the paper were at the end. Now, and it again, because everyone was lovely, no one was like, "Oh, this isn't fair." We could see, we could all see. So I wouldn't advise doing that. Is my point. I've heard of people doing a bake-off to get to figure out who's first, pulling the names out of a hat.
Oh, wow.
So while those things seem nice and collaborative and making, I would say don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to, if you're still not sure at the beginning, what you can do is say, okay, we're still figuring out who's going to do what. Let's come back at a certain stage, whether that's halfway through, it has to be before it's ready, of course, and let's have another discussion about it. And let's be, what's your thing for today? Let's be fair and actually sit and think and go, right, well, it's this person's knowledge that we've used, but it's this person that actually wrote it and did all of the revisions. Well, how do you weigh up? Is it because the person who did the revisions and did most of the writing, they didn't have the knowledge in the first place. So the first person's put all their knowledge down, and then someone else has gone, okay, we got to move all this. So, you know, do you, is it the person with the knowledge in the first place? I think yes. I
I
think
think it's
yes.
very important, Carrie, what you say. It's very
Yeah.
important to start this communication early and revision later when you see who put how much work into this publication. So your recent paper about generative AI in your
AI
research,
frameworks. Yeah, yeah,
you
exactly. And
worked with different teams.
I
And
did. Well,
how was it?
it was great. We worked with Macquarie, and again, everybody was lovely. But there were two people on our paper who had the IP. They were the ones, and so from there, and so in my mind, they should have been the first ones. So, but because it was a bit of a, but then, so what do you do with the person that had the idea and brought us all together? Anne's got an interesting point saying we've got the person with the largest contribution as the first
Yeah.
author and the project manager goes last. That's really interesting, isn't it? So is the person with the idea who brings everyone together and spends a lot of time pulling everything and all the ideas together, are they a project manager or are they, so yes,
When I say project manager, I mean that senior person who brings, so career-wise, my previous boss used to say you want to be first author or last author, because the last author is seen as being the senior professor who has compiled this team.
yeah,
So it goes contrary, like where you think, oh, last author is the least contribution. No, he always wanted to be last. He never wanted to be first. He always wanted to be last.
and
Because him career-wise, that implied that he was the manager of the team,
yeah, that's
a lab
interesting.
leader.
Yeah,
Um,
right, right.
And because he does a lot of international work, and internationally, it's either you be first or you be last, career-wise.
Yeah, right. That's really interesting. And would you say then for that particular person, did he already have a lot of publications?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see, so then again, so does that become part of the discussion? Oh, this person already has 10 publications. These people only have
No,
two.
it's
No,
more
that's
that
right. Exactly. Yes, you
he's
can't
the
say
more
that.
senior
Yeah.
person who's brought it all together, and his preference was to be last author because he's now gone on to become a distinguished professor
Yeah,
in
right.
uni, and he's used that. Look, I brought all these teams together. I'm
Together.
last
Perfect.
author.
Yeah, right.
That was his career progression.
Yeah, yeah, which means as well, he's been transparent and he's been authentic. And he has said, my role now as a professor is to bring these other people with me, which is exactly what our DVC are at QT, who is a prolific publisher, 50 papers a year or something, because he has labs all over the world. But that's what he's saying is the difference between being a mentor, excuse me, and being, what's the other word? I always forget it.
Sponsor.
A sponsor. Thanks, Imogen. Being a sponsor. This has been a big thing at QUT is you don't just need a mentor, you need a sponsor. And this sounds like your professor you're talking about, he is the perfect example of a sponsor. Someone who people want them to go to conferences all over the world and they like, you know what, I can't go to this one, but I have this postgrad or this HDR student who's working on things. I'm their supervisor. I recommend they come and talk about our work in progress. So, isn't it? So, this is the thing you need to try to find people who are going to be like that and be transparent and authentic and talk to you about their reasons for what they're doing. Tim?
Um, it's interesting what you were saying, and I imagine this is really domain and discipline specific as well. But I suppose that that idea of someone having like that many publications in to me that sort of seems to undermine the idea of authorship to some extent. Like if a person has done 1 week of work for something, like is it really meaningful? I understand that obviously it's different, but yeah, that's an interesting perspective there because I hadn't thought about it in that way.
No, and we're not all working with distinguished professors either, you know. And so that's where, again, it's so important because you have the different personalities, different career goals, and obviously not everybody can be first author. Something again with trying to make assessment of research productivity a little bit more equal is QT again is beginning to talk about how we can you don't have to be first author for it to be counted as something towards your progression. You could also be the second or the third author. So you have more than one author who is the corresponding author, if that makes sense, who's involved in the whole publication process and submission. So again, we are seeing a little bit of a change which would help with that. But of course, if you're first author, that's fantastic. But not everyone can be first author, which is why you have to figure out, what everyone, maybe you're doing a project where there's going to be 3 papers. So take it in turns. I'm in a project at the moment that's where it's at. One person was the first author of the first paper, and then another person's going to be first author of the second paper. So that's another way you can do it. But again, we can see how important that these principles that you've been talking about are important from the very first minute that you start talking, even when you're publishing from your thesis as well. But yeah, that was a good two very opposite kind of situations happening there. Is anybody else
So I have
wanna?
a question about the sponsor.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you consider, because we can apply authorship rules, acknowledge as author, but is there another way how we can acknowledge this contribution for the paper? Is someone like a sponsor supporting you?
Yeah, you can put that in the acknowledgements. Absolutely. Same as in a thesis. You can have
Okay,
acknowledgements in
so
a
we can list
paper.
our sponsors as well.
Yeah, and that's often the best way to acknowledge somebody who, just as Tim's saying, was only involved sort of for a week. However, that lab wouldn't exist
Yeah.
without that professor in the first place.
Mhm.
So you want to recognize them. And, the thing, as I was saying, with our DVCR at QT, he's a chemist. He doesn't need publications, and he ends up and he isn't the first author generally, as far as I can remember. But he's got labs everywhere. And that's one of the things that he prides himself in is how many of his HDR students have ended up not necessarily in academia, because only a few of them have, but getting their fulfilling careers in industry or whatever it is. And that's he trying to explain that difference between a mentor and a sponsor. It is really hard to understand sometimes. Because you may think your mentor is doing all of those sorts of things, but the difference is in more in the actions, whereas a mentor is advising you to act in this specific way or to do these specific, things. So I think with the sponsor, it's those actions of, just as Anne was saying, no, I don't go as first author. I go as last author. I'm still there, but it's all of you that are providing, the most input potentially.
Mm. And have you ever used an authorship agreement form in your career?
Oh, which is very interesting, isn't it? I probably should have, but I guess for me, I've really aligned myself with people who are generous and kind. I don't think yeah. And again, similar thing. You be first author this time, I'll be first author next time. Then, and I had obviously that one. The one where I was the RA and he said that I could be an author and he couldn't pay me. I ended up third author, not second, because he brought in a data analysis guy who did a lot of data analysis. And so when we looked at it and weighed it up, the other guy had done probably more than me because I wrote the literature review, the introduction, I pulled it all together and all of those sorts of things. So, and I didn't collect data and I didn't analyze the data. So that made sense. And again, I guess I wasn't very career orientated at that point. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm just glad to be on the paper. But I wouldn't, again, I wouldn't recommend that all of you go that way unless that is exactly how you feel. I would, yeah, get what you can get, do what you can do to get that first authorship, or at least that second, or, um, um, you know, but the main thing is, of course, is that you get acknowledged for your time and your effort. So talk about it from the beginning, as we've been saying all the way through, but you may not know. That's the thing. So you can say, okay, at this point, this is what we think the authorship will be, but make a note to come back and double check, and be clear to everyone that this may change, but this is what it is from now. But don't leave it to the end, because by the end, you're all just like, oh, just want to get this thing submitted. Um, you know, yeah. So, and you also have to, as part of those authorship forms, the type of tasks that you've done within the paper, what weighs up? Do you see what I mean? Is the person that had the idea, or is it the person that did the data collection and analysis, which I think is the hardest work,
Yeah.
right? Anne, what do you think?
I was just going to comment on, so I'm on a very large project at the moment where on the actual application for money, a large number of people
Yeah,
are
yes.
listed.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are only like 5% of their time and 10% of their time. And that 5 or 10% might mean it's a project management side of things that they're going to be doing, like dealing with the funding body or dealing with the finance people. They're not actually going to be in the field. So I'm going to have to negotiate, like, will you actually be listed on a paper? Like, you're listed on the project, you're listed as a project contribution.
Yep.
But when it comes to actually publishing, if you haven't worked on this paper, how can I list you? So yeah, and I'm in agriculture.
Yeah.
More and more projects get funded not to a person. Projects get funded to bigger and bigger teams.
Yep. Same in health. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's going to be that, yeah, I know you're listed as the, 5% on the project, but you didn't contribute to this paper at all. But
So they could go in the acknowledgement,
yeah.
in that case, because you wouldn't have been able to do the project without that funding.
Mm.
So that would be a good, as Ola was saying, that would be a real, how do you acknowledge those people? And that would be a place. But again, that has to be a discussion, because they might say, no, I want to be on the paper. But yeah, you could put a full argument together to say, well, you haven't contributed
Yeah.
to the
And that's where it's
paper.
like cross-culturally,
Mm-hmm.
some cultures expect like an acknowledgement of your seniority, like respect of your seniors. That includes putting their name on a paper. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I have seen some PhD students from other countries come over and they're putting all these people on their papers and they might not have even seen the paper, but it's respect for their sponsors or respect for,
Mm-hmm.
and
And it's
they see it as absolutely essential because you're not respecting them by not putting them there, even
yeah,
if they
which
didn't contribute.
yeah, which is it in theory that is fair, but in actuality,
Mhm.
it's kind of not. However, culturally, are you going to want to say to somebody, no, you shouldn't do that when that would make them uncomfortable? Yeah, it's a very hard situation, isn't it? Really interesting. Riley, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so I'm at James Cook in Singapore.
Yep.
And I've lived in Singapore for 15 years, and my wife works in O&G, obstetrics and gynecology, and she's been involved in research there. And as Anne was saying, the publications there I find quite funny because, she'll be involved in research and it'll be pretty much her and maybe two other people or something. And then the whole department will basically be on the paper, including the head of department will always be on the paper, even though the head of department will have nothing to do with
Mm.
any part of the process. But it's just a cultural thing.
Cultural. Yeah. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
head of department, or if they collaborate with any other department like Institute of
Mm.
Mental Health, if it's a mental health paper, the head of the whole department of the mental health, like all the seniors from mental health will be on the paper, and then all the people from the O&G department will be on the paper. You end up with a paper with like 30 people, even though the project was realistically done by maybe 5 people.
Hmm. And are
um
those 5 people the first authors? Is that how it
Yeah, so
goes? Yeah. Okay.
it'll be the first, but then you'll see like 30 people at the end, and it's
Mm.
all the seniors, and the most senior person will be usually at the end. It'll be the head of department or some very distinguished professor at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Usually that person had absolutely nothing to do with the paper. It's
Yeah.
just usually the name. Um, like they have a very uh a high presence in research. If you look at their profile, like that's kind of I think the another reason they do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like they'll have a lot of publications in very high places, a lot of very high impact journals and things like that. So I think that's another reason why they like to have those names on the
Yes,
papers.
I was going to say that is another reason. Yes, research impact as well. I've actually just Googled the Singapore Statement on Research Integrity. Fairly similar. 4 core principles: honesty, accountability, professional courtesy, and fairness, stewardship, being a good steward of research. Um, yeah, they there's more there. But so yeah, so they have their own research integrity and ethics code. I know in our code that you wouldn't, that would go against our code to put someone who had nothing to do with writing the paper, and the appropriate thing would be to acknowledge them. So in that instance, we could say that that head of the department has allowed these doctors or researchers to spend time doing this research, which is for the good of everyone. But they've said, I suppose, yeah, sure, you can use our hospital as a research site, those sorts of things, which again facilitate the research being undertaken, doesn't it? But if we follow our Australian code that says they have to have contributed to the paper, yeah, it goes against that, doesn't it? But culturally, I can't see how we could argue with that. It's been happening for so long. Has your wife ever said it? I'm sure she hasn't. said anything.
I mean, it's just everyone does it. It's
That's
just
right. It's the
the
way it's
cultural.
done. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I feel that in Australia, probably some people try to get around that idea of the authorship by saying, yes, well, we got the funding or whatever. So,
Mm.
yeah, just be careful. That's the best that we could say. You're obviously all aware of what should happen. But as we know, what should happen isn't always what happens. And you're at the end of the day, you're making those choices. So I said yes to the professor and, that said, I can't pay you, but I'll put you on the paper. Now, maybe I should have said, oh, well, then no, I don't want to do it. But I wanted him to keep giving me work. I wanted to be part of the process. Do you see? So swings and roundabouts, but at the end of the day, there are authorship expectations. There is a code that we should all abide by. So we should do what's going to be what we think is best for us. But these are really interesting examples. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, that's, I guess, something we hadn't
Yeah.
in this one talked
Cultural
about as
aspect.
much. Yeah, yeah, because we do have our Indigenous researchers, our Pacific researchers, so
Yeah.
closer to home in that way. And I imagine that there's plenty of things
Yeah.
that we'd all need to navigate around that.
Mm.
Yeah, you can always get advice would be another thing. Obviously, if this instance there's something happening with your supervisors, you will have research integrity advisors within your universities. So you can always go and have a chat with them and get some advice. That would be something else. Or if you have a mentor who you want to who is helpful for you, you could talk to them. What do you think? Should I do this? Does it sound like, something that I maybe shouldn't do because I'm going to run into trouble down the track? I think at the end of the day, just take care of yourself and make sure that you're not taken advantage of.
Mm. That's a good point.
Mm.
And Imogen, did you have some unusual cases when you were publishing your articles?
Yeah, I've had a couple of kind of interesting stories that I've been thinking about while Kerry's been talking. One example is kind of a nice thing that I've seen done a little bit. And just as a note, I work in the humanities alongside my role working with Alexandra and Kerry. Um, what I've seen a few times recently is some close-knit research teams who've decided that their contribution to a paper has been more or less equal. So that all of them pretty much did the same amount of work and they've worked very closely. So they publish and they include a statement that says all authors on this publication contributed equally, and they the authors will adjust the order of authorship to suit them, basically. So if author X is writing up their academic profile or putting something into ORCID, they put themselves as the first author. And if
Oh,
author
wow.
Y is doing the same thing, they put themselves as the first author. So they're kind of, I suppose, they're radically trying to buck the system a little
Yeah,
bit.
good.
It's quite a bold statement, but they've done it. They've got away with it. It's and so there's that. It happens. But I must say I work in the humanities and in the School of Creative Arts at QUT. So this is maybe just artists being artistic, but I'm seeing that happen a little bit.
Good.
I had a horror story, something that happened to me. I've had a few things happen to me over the years. I was a very sort of naive researcher for many years, and it's
See,
taken,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, me
it's
too. Don't be like Imogen and I.
don't be like us. And young female researcher, eager to please,
Yep,
just wanted to get my foot in the door, wanted
yep,
to do the work,
yep.
and I really just allowed myself to be exploited. But recently, a couple of years ago, I was given a contract to help some academics get publications. And my role was really to give them some feedback on things that they'd written, give them some strategic advice about what journals to target and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, one of them sat me down and said, I need you to ghostwrite this publication for me. You've got 20 hours to work with me. I need you to use it to write this publication so that I can publish. And I said, I don't think that's what this is. And I don't think I can do that. And I don't think there's really enough hours for me to do that. And then I met with this person again, and they pressured me even more. And they actually said that a senior academic had said that this is what I was required to do. Anyway, so I wrote a letter and I wrote an email to the then academic lead of research in the school, and they were mortified. The suggestion that I should write something and not be acknowledged as an author for someone else to be author is completely unethical. But I must add that it took me a few years to get to the point where I remember sending off this email to the academic lead and just being nervous and worried that maybe I was wrong. It took me years and years to be able to question things. And I guess for some of you, your early career, I hope that doesn't happen to you. But if you're ever thinking, if someone ever says, oh, you're third author, you're last author, and you think, well, actually, I did more than you or something like that, my advice is get advice from a trusted senior academic. They are everywhere. Often your school or faculty will have someone who is responsible for research. So in my school, we have an academic lead, and we also have a director of research training in the faculty, and a director of research, an associate dean research. And all of these people, it is their job to keep this stuff in check, to advise you, to support you. You might also have a mentor, or, if it's not, maybe your PhD supervisor is someone you can talk to, but I would always advise you to get a second opinion if you're a little bit unsure. These things are almost always in the realms of grey, shades of grey. Who did more? I don't know what you did. Did you do 3 hours or 2 hours or a day? Or, it's really hard to quantify. But if you're in doubt, seek advice and speak up. I feel like academia is a very, very long, career-long apprenticeship in speaking up.
Yeah, and that's so important, Imogen. That's another really good example. And I was just going to say, when you get to your week 5, you'll see that it's Principle 8 about promotion. And one of those things is our job as being part of the research division or portfolio or whatever it is that it's called at your university is we should promote responsible research practices. We should promote and foster this positive research culture and environment. That is part of our job. Well, not our job, but you know what I mean. It's part of that being part of a group of, a group of researchers within an institution is that if there are people like Imogen who speak up and say, this is kind of happening and I don't think it's right, then that's a positive thing. And then it's not up to us as the ones at this level to then do anything about it. It's up to the people who are paid to do these things and to, as exactly as Imogen said, to keep it all in check. And I think, what's the worst thing that could have happened, Imogen? They may have come back to you and said, yeah, you have to do that. But there's no way they would say that. And plus you put it in writing as well.
Yeah, I put it in writing and I said in my view, this at the very least, this constitutes authorship. And so if I proceed, is my name going to be on this paper? But what actually happened was this person, the academic lead, went to the head of school and they immediately said, you're no longer doing anything for this academic and you can have those hours. So
Wow.
and claim that pay. And so I did.
But the reason why too, the thing like that is that when when you have money for an RA, it's only there for a year. And if you don't spend it, you're not going to get it again. That's how I got a lot of my actual work when I was an RA, was like, I've got this money. We've got to spend it. So can you go and do an annotated bibliography on this thing that we want to do a project for. So, and again, that was, I was never going to be on their papers because or I was just doing that initial groundwork and then they would go from there. But I did get paid, and there was never a thought that I would be an author in those. I was just doing that initial groundwork because they had the money and for someone to do that. So yeah, there's a lot of things to keep your eye out on. Don't let us turn you off being an RA. It's a great thing to do. But again, it needs to be very clear what it is they want you to do and what it's for and what's the next thing. And if you don't feel comfortable writing a literature review for a paper that you're not going to be part of, then have a think about whether, maybe you can come back and say, oh, I'd like to be part of the paper, but and help with the analysis and data collection. They might say no. But again, it's transparency, it's honesty, be true to yourself. We know the rules or the code, let's call it. And I think that the code is very clear on, those key principles that we can all uphold. And at the end of the day, we'll know we've done the right thing. So find your code for your universities if you're not at QUT. If you have any questions, yeah, but enjoy the rest of the module. I really like this module.
Yeah.
It is really important, and I think it's very practical because even today we've talked about conundrums like, well, what is it that I should do next? So having to think our way through and figure out what's best for us. Yeah, all of these questions are going to be posed as you go along, I would say. So, yeah, good luck.
Thank you, Kerry, so much for your time. I know you have another session coming.
Yes, I better get going. Yeah, all right. Nice to see everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And do we have any questions from the group? It was very good discussions, I must say.
I think that we can all use the bad experiences we've had to then feed into the next generation.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So this project that I'm talking about, we've got a young mum who's just working 1 day a week on the project to help us out admin wise. But she's actually got her own PhD, even though we've employed her as an admin officer, because she's just taking a career break to raise her kids. But I've already said to her, if you want to contribute to this lit review if you've got time within your admin role, happy to have you as a co-author. Because someone did that to me. They let me contribute to a lit review, even though I was only 1 day a week, because her taking a career break to raise kids shouldn't punish her for not being able to publish. And yeah, someone did that to me, so I'm passing that on to her. Yeah.
That's true. And also it will only help other students to read your experiences. Even looking at our discussions this week, I think we learn a lot. How to approach future papers and when to discuss authorship and rights. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, Imogen, do you want to add anything, or shall we summarize the session?
No, I agree with that, Anne, and yeah, it's something I'm very conscious of now that I'm someone who has budget to engage RAs.
Yes.
Yeah. But no, it's been a great discussion and appreciate everyone showing up and taking time out of what is no doubt busy days. And look forward to seeing you in the module now that you can put a face to our names and we can to yours. That's a really nice thing. We've only got a couple of weeks left, but it's been really interesting.
And join discussions. Thank you so much for responding to other students as well. I really like how you guys support each other. Yeah, it has been very nice group in the module. So thank you, and let's continue in on our discussions. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Imogen.